There is a silence older than sound, a hush that hums beneath memory. And tonight, it finds you. You're not falling asleep. You're returning to a place your soul remembers even if your name has forgotten, a place where time doesn't tick, it drips, where water carries the weight of prayers, and stars bend down to listen. You lie still now, but it's not your bed you feel beneath you. It's polished stone, cool, ancient, sacred. You're drifting gently on a bark of dreams as the Nile whispers beneath you like a second heartbeat. I know it's been loud lately. I know your thoughts have been pacing. The day pressed too many fingers on your chest, and now all you want is for something to hold you without asking questions. So come here. You don't have to try anymore. You don't even have to understand. You only have to listen. Not with your ears, but with the part of you that still remembers the desert, the incense, the gold dust of a forgotten name. Let your shoulders melt. Let your eyelids sink like the sun beneath the western horizon. Even the gods rest. You can too. Inhale slowly, like drawing breath through the mouth of a temple. Exhale gently, as if exhaling centuries. And if some part of you feels known here, feels like it's been waiting for this, maybe it has. This isn't just a video. It's a ceremony. For those who still believe in echoes and stars that never burned out, only faded softly into myth. If that sounds like you, you've found your temple. Feel free to subscribe. Leave a sacred mark, even if it's just a word. Now, let us return. The Nile remembers. And tonight, you remember too. You wake not in your time, but in theirs. The Nile is not a metaphor here. It is the breathing line of the world. Its banks are wrapped in papyrus and moonlight. The stars above are heavy with meaning. Not distant, but close, as if Osiris himself once placed them carefully, one by one, in the sky. You are not a visitor. You belong. Your feet are bare, dust clinging to your ankles as you walk beside the river in silence. The silence is not empty. It is filled with symbols. The hum of insects, the slow splash of a crocodile in the dark, the distant ring of bronze in the hands of a temple bell. This was not a world that needed to be loud. To speak was to disturb the sacred order Ma'at balance. And the Egyptians knew that stillness was not absence, but presence sharpened to perfection. Here, silence is a language, one that priests, farmers, queens, and children all spoke fluently without a single word. You feel it in the way the wind passes over your shoulder, as if someone were brushing off yesterday. In this place, night is not something to fear. It is Ra's nightly journey through the Udjat, the underworld of dreams. And you, like him, must surrender to the currents. But first you kneel at the edge, and you listen to the frogs singing their time-old songs, to the rushes whispering stories of kings who rose and fell, to the water, always the water, carrying your breath further than you will ever know. This river has seen everything. It saw the first time you laughed. It saw the first pyramid lifted toward the sun, and the last time a name was spoken aloud before fading into myth. You scoop the water in your hands. It tastes like copper and quiet. And somehow it tastes familiar. There are things the Egyptians knew that we forgot, and things they whispered that we never heard. They didn't divide life into hours and emails. They didn't rush dreams. They didn't fear death because they knew with every grain of sand, with every lotus bloom that opened, that the world was circular, always returning, always renewing. And in that silence, by the river, you begin to remember what your modern body has tried so hard to forget, that time does not march, it spirals. That rest is not laziness, it is sacred rhythm. And that silence, true silence, is not what happens when sound stops, but what happens when meaning deepens. You breathe again. Not like before, slower, as if each breath were wrapped in linen, as if each inhale carried a hieroglyph. You look up. The stars are arranged like thoughts before language. The gods are not above you. They are in the water, in your bones, in the wind curling through the reeds. You hear the voice again, not outside, but within. A memory, or maybe just a knowing. If this was only a dream, why do you remember it so clearly? The Nile doesn't answer. It never does. But it keeps flowing. And maybe that's enough, because in the silence of the Nile at night, you are not lost. You are returning. You notice it first in the way the stars don't move. Or rather, they do, but not forward. They circle. They return. As if the night sky itself were a clock, but one that refused to tick. You walk barefoot on a stone floor, its surface worn smooth by 1,000 years of silent footsteps. Each step presses your soul deeper into the past. And still, the scarab watches, small, shiny, patient. It crawls across the threshold of the temple, not hurried, not lost, just eternal. You pause. And for a moment, the entire world bends around that beetle. You remember the stories. The way Egyptians believed this tiny creature rolled the sun across the sky each morning, pushing it through the horizon like a golden pearl through the dark meat of night. You wonder, did they know something we've forgotten? That time isn't a race. That time isn't linear. It's sacred geometry, spiral, layered, breathing. Because here, in this golden hush, you feel it. Time doesn't pass. It returns. The scarab teaches this. It rolls what was into what is into what might be. It circles and circles. Like memory. Like grief. Like stars seen through tears. You kneel by the stone. The scarab pauses beside you. For a breath. You are both still creature and soul. Observer and observed. You think of the Egyptians, not as distant figures in dusty books, but as you. People who watched the same sunrise, who closed their eyes and wondered if time ever ended, who buried loved ones with spells not to forget, but to return. They believed that the scarab wasn't just an insect. It was a Keper, the god of becoming, not being, not ending. Becoming. And isn't that what you are too? Not a finished thing. Not a single self. But something still forming. Still unraveling its past like thread from a cloak once worn by someone you almost remember. You close your eyes. The heat of the desert slips around you like silk. You are not in 2025. You are not even in a year. You are in the loop. The air smells like sweet myrrh and stone. Somewhere nearby, incense burns in a brass bowl. It curls like the tail of time, upward, spiraling, reminding you that even smoke doesn't rise in straight lines. You sit on the threshold between two pillars carved with forgotten symbols. One pillar speaks of yesterday, the other whispers of tomorrow. And in between them, you exist. Right here. Right now. But now doesn't feel like a single point. It feels like a river folded back onto itself, rippled with memory and dreaming. And the scarab keeps moving. The sun begins to rise, but slowly, as if reluctant, as if unsure if it's done this before or will do it again. And in this light, this golden haze, you see them priests in linen robes, walking in silence, their heads bowed to the ground, not in shame, but in reverence for the circle that binds all things. They don't rush. They don't speak. They simply move as if time were something you must carry gently, like a bowl of sacred water balanced on the crown of your head. And you do not follow them. You move with them, like a scarab rolling your own sun through this world of shadows. You think of your own life, your deadlines, your goals, your hurried mornings, the way time has felt like sand slipping through desperate fingers. But here, it's different. Time is not escaping. It's returning. Always. You remember something strange, a scarab amulet once gifted to you as a child in a museum gift shop. How you stared at it for hours. How you felt it was watching you. How it made you feel ancient and important without knowing why. And maybe now you understand. That symbol was not decoration. It was memory. From another self. Another version of you, who once walked along this same Nile in the body of a servant, a scribe, a dreamer, or someone who simply loved stars more than sleep. The scarab does not tell time. It is time. It does not mark events. It marks return. And if you listen closely now, you'll hear the rhythm in your breath mirroring the scarab's path forward. Yes, but always curved, a circle, a prayer, a story being told again. You are not late. You are not early. You are simply where you need to be, rolling your own light through the shadow of this moment. The scarab pauses again, and for a single heartbeat, you both disappear into silence, into symbol, into something beyond time. And then, softly, you reappear, wiser, but without knowing why. The scarab moves on, and so do you. But part of you stays, right there between the pillars, in that loop, in that moment when time curved like a scarab, and you remembered that nothing is ever truly lost, only transformed. You are no longer walking. You are floating through halls of shadow, lined not with bricks, but with moments. This is not a corridor in space. It is a passage through your own weight. And at the end of it, a scale waits. You feel it before you see it. A presence light, ancient, silent, not judging, just waiting. Not with fury, but with patience that has measured countless souls before you and will continue long after you forget this dream. The Hall of Two Truths. A name whispered like linen folding. You know where you are even if your mind resists. This is the place the Egyptians believed your heart would be brought after your final exhale. Not to be punished, but to be weighed. Not against gold, not against your words, not even against your beliefs, but against a feather. Ma'at, the goddess of truth and balance, held that feather. It was made not of down, but of meaning. Light as silence, sharp as integrity. You see the scale now, balanced, unmoved. One pan waits for your heart, the other for the feather, and already you feel something shifting inside you. Not guilt, not shame, but all the subtle hesitations you've carried like small stones in your chest. Every time you walked past a hurting soul and looked away. Every time you spoke too quickly, or not at all. Every time you tightened your voice when gentleness was needed. The Egyptians knew. The true measure of a soul was not grand acts but softness, kindness, balance. To pass this test meant you had lived not loudly, but in rhythm, not perfectly, but sincerely. They believed your heart recorded every moment not in ink, but in gravity. And now, you remember. You remember that the gods didn't need you to be powerful. They needed you to be light, because only a light heart can walk forward into the fields of peace. You close your eyes, and suddenly, you are no longer watching. You are remembering. You remember the moment you first heard someone cry and didn't know what to do. You remember the first time you lied not out of malice, but fear. You remember the time you forgave someone without needing to be asked, and the moment you loved without defense, even when it cost you. These are the weights and feathers that shape your soul. Not dogma, not achievement, but the quiet alchemy of how you carried your presence through a world made of shadow and chance. The figure beside you speaks now, not with a voice, but with presence. Tall, luminous, eyes like dusk over desert. Anubis, the guide of souls, the silent companion. He does not threaten. He does not question. He only gestures, and you place your heart onto the scale. It glows faintly. Not red, but something softer. A color you cannot name. Somewhere between ash and remembrance, the feather drifts into place beside it. Not dropped, placed. By something you do not see but trust. The scale tips just slightly, then finds stillness. Your breath catches. Not because of fear, but because of recognition. You feel it in your bones. You are not being judged. You are being seen. Every overlooked kindness, every quiet grief, every pause when you could have reacted but chose stillness instead. It is all here, and somehow, the scale balances. Not because you were perfect, but because you tried to walk softly. In that moment, you understand the Egyptians in a way no book ever could explain. This was never about punishment. It was about restoration. It was about returning the soul to its correct shape after life had dented it with noise. You feel your chest grow lighter, as if something old has been released. And in that weightlessness, a question arises. What if we lived every day as if the heart would be weighed not by what we achieved, but by how gently we move through the world? The answer isn't spoken. It lingers in the silence like a perfume only memory can smell. You look up. The chamber is gone. Or perhaps you never left. You're standing again beside the river, under stars so ancient they no longer shine but remember. And in your chest, your heart no longer feels like something beating. It feels like something floating. Featherlight. You exhale, not in relief, but in reverence, because now you understand that the way you walk matters more than anything you will ever say. You see it long before you reach it, rising out of the horizon like a memory surfacing from beneath the conscious mind. A shape too perfect to be random, too ancient to be modern, and yet somehow still alive. The pyramid. A monument not just to kings, but to time itself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't demand. It waits, as it always has. You step closer, each footfall softened by desert dust, as if the earth itself has been cushioning this path for thousands of years, just so your shadow could arrive gently. And in that shadow, you realize something simple. This is not a building. It's a sentence written in stone, designed not to be read, but to be felt. You reach the base. The blocks are impossibly large, each one taller than your body, each one smoothed by hands that lived and died before calendars. You place your hand against the stone, warm, textured, alive, not alive like breath or blood, but alive like meaning. Alive like an idea that refused to die. The pyramid breathes differently, not through windows, but through geometry. Angles aligned with stars that no longer hold names on modern tongues. Corridors aimed precisely at constellations that spoke once to gods, and now only to the night. You are not standing in front of power. You are standing in front of longing. These stones were not stacked in hunger for control. They were placed, one by one, in rhythm with rituals you've forgotten, but not completely. Because something inside you feels at home here. You remember the story how the ancient Egyptians believed the soul, the Ka, needed a house. Not of wood, not of clay, but of permanence. They built the pyramid not to say I was here, but to ask, will I be remembered when the stars no longer shine? You take a breath. It echoes. Not through air, but through time. You step inside. Not loudly. You don't need to. This place has already heard everything. The passage is narrow. The light thins. And the further in you go, the more the outside fades until all that remains is your breath, and the stone and the strange awareness that the silence here has texture. It folds around you like linen. It's not empty. It's sacred. You pass chambers with ceilings aligned to solstice light. You pass shafts where no sunlight has entered for millennia, but still, something glows. Perhaps it's memory. Perhaps it's something older. You reach a room at the core. No gold, no jewels, only stillness, only space, perfectly proportioned, as if the air itself were being tuned to a frequency that only the soul can hear. You sit. You don't speak. You don't need to, because this chamber is not an ending. It's a continuation. It holds what cannot be named. It listens, not to words, but to intention. And in that stillness, you feel something stir not in the room, but in you. You realize this. The pyramid is not a tomb. It is a transition, a bridge between body and breath, between history and silence, between death and the afterbreath. Because the Egyptians did not fear death. They studied it, practiced it, wrote about it, prepared for it not as an end, but as an elevation. They saw the body as temporary, the name as sacred, and the soul as layered like the levels of the pyramid itself. You recall their words, how the Ba, the personality, could fly, how the Ka, the life force, could stay, how the name, if spoken, could make a person live again. So they built these chambers to hold names, to protect silence, to outlast forgetting. You exhale, not from exhaustion, from recognition, because part of you remembers that you, too, have been carried, not in this exact place, but in spirit, by people who spoke your name once softly in love, in mourning, in reverence. And maybe this pyramid isn't just for pharaohs. Maybe it's for anyone who has ever longed to be remembered after their breath left the body. You rise, not suddenly, not forcefully. You simply rise and walk back through the passage. The walls seem to pulse slightly, or perhaps it's you, resonating differently now. As you step into the outside light, you realize the air has changed. Or maybe it hasn't. Maybe it's you. The sky is the same, but the space behind your ribs is not. There's more room, more quiet, more reverence. And as you turn to look back, the pyramid stands exactly as it did, unmoving, unbreaking, unexplained. But now, it doesn't seem heavy. It seems like a prayer you can walk through, a stone breath you were meant to hear. Because some things are not built to impress. They are built to remember, to hold the pieces of us that would otherwise dissolve in time. So if you ever wonder what happens after the breath, think of the pyramid, and know that somewhere, someone placed a stone just for you. You hear her before you see her, not in words but in heat. A low hum in the sand, like something ancient shifting beneath your skin. The air changes, not heavier, sharper. As if something sacred has just opened its eyes. You are walking through a wide plain now. Endless, scorched, silent. But it doesn't feel empty. It feels watched. Not cruelly, just intently. Like a flame that hasn't decided if it will warm you or consume you. You are in her domain now. Sekhmet, the lion-headed goddess, daughter of Ra, bearer of plague and cure, lady of slaughter, mother of healing. You've heard of her, but not like this, not as a symbol of divine rage, but as the part of the universe that burns what you refuse to release. She is not evil. She is not kind. She is necessary. And as the heat presses closer, you begin to understand. Sekhmet was created when humanity forgot its sacred rhythm, when chaos took root, Ra sent her not out of anger, but balance. Her fire wasn't punishment. It was purification. It was a mirror, held too close. And perhaps that's what you're feeling now. You walk further. The wind is dry and sharp like a whisper made of sand. In the distance, something roars. Not animal, not thunder, but soul. You reach a shrine, carved into red stone, half buried in sun-cracked silence. You enter, and there she is, not a statue, a presence. Eyes carved in obsidian, body poised like fire-made flesh, lioness jaws, a solar disk on her head, and around her offerings, dates, incense, scarabs, and tiny bottles of something red. You kneel, not because she demands it, but because standing feels arrogant here. She does not speak, but you feel your skin warm, not just outside within. She sees you, all of you, not just the persona, not just the voice you wear, but the quiet rage you hide, the pain you've compressed, the hunger for release you dare not admit. Sekhmet sees it, and she doesn't flinch. She doesn't tell you to smile. She doesn't tell you to be grateful. She burns it, not in hate, in clarity. You close your eyes. The heat grows. It moves through your chest, into your spine, into every memory you buried because it was too much. You feel tears forming, but not of sadness, of surrender. You remember the myth, how Ra had to stop her, how she almost destroyed everything, how they tricked her by pouring red beer across the field so she'd believe it was blood. She drank, she slept, she softened, and when she woke, she had become something else. Hathor, the goddess of joy, of music, of love. Same being, different face. And maybe that's what you're learning here. That mercy is not the opposite of fire. It's what fire becomes when it remembers itself. Sekhmet is the rage that says no more. No more self-betrayal. No more silence around what matters. No more shrinking for the comfort of others. But she also says, let go. Let the old identity crack. Let the grief burn through. Let the fear be released like smoke through a broken window. She does not destroy you. She reveals you. And when the fire is done, you are not ashes. You are real. You are raw. You are sacred. You rise, slowly. And for the first time in a long time, you feel your back straight, not stiff, not proud. Aligned. Sekhmet remains silent, but something inside you speaks. I can hold power and still be gentle. I can hold grief and still be whole. I can burn without becoming cruel. You step out into the sun, and the wind greets you not with sharpness, but softness. A transformation has occurred, not loudly, but entirely. You look back once. The shrine hums faintly, and in your chest, a new kind of fire begins to glow. Not wild, not afraid, just steady. Because now you know, destruction is not always violence. Sometimes it is the shedding of lies. Sometimes it is the moment you finally say, I won't carry this anymore. Sekhmet's gift is not rage. It is release. And in that release, you are not burned. You are remade. You're standing in sunlight so clear, it feels like the gods are listening. Before you, a shape rises from the earth. Not vast like a pyramid. Not sprawling like a temple, but vertical. Sharp. Exact. An obelisk, cut from a single stone, lifted by impossible hands. Its tip piercing not clouds, but meaning. You walk toward it. The air around it feels thinner, more sacred, as if sound itself quiets to let the stone speak. This isn't just architecture. It's a sentence, written without vowels, carved without softness, pointed like a prayer too urgent to lie down. The sides of the obelisk are wrapped in hieroglyphs, but they're not words the way you know them. They're shapes, spirals, animals, eyes, feathers, feet, each one both image and message, each one both metaphor and map. You run your fingers along the carved symbols. They're not random. They're precise, placed in sequence to mirror the path of stars. You remember something half-heard that these monoliths were aligned to constellations, that their shadows tracked the sun, that their tips touched the invisible threads between earth and sky. And you wonder, what were they trying to say? What message did the ancients etch so carefully into stone that it would need to stand for thousands of years? Was it a name, a direction, a warning, a memory, or simply this: we were here, we watched the stars, we remembered the gods, we spoke upwards, because the Egyptians did not speak sideways. They did not build for the eye level. They built for the sky. Their architecture wasn't about shelter. It was about communication. Everything pointed upward: pyramids, columns, obelisks, dreams. And in that pointing, they carved a kind of language that didn't need sound, a silent tongue spoken in shape and shadow. You step around the obelisk. The sun strikes one side cleanly. The other is in shade. Light and dark, life and death, Re and Osiris. You realize this stone doesn't just speak. It balances. It holds duality without contradiction. And in that it teaches. You sit at the base. The stone hums faintly, as if sunlight itself is vibrating through memory. A voice rises in you. Not yours, not foreign, just older. If you could write to the sky, what would you say? You close your eyes, and instead of answers, you see images. A child looking up at the night sky, wondering where lost souls go. A priest lighting a single flame in a chamber carved with stars. A woman etching a single glyph into wet clay, then pressing it to her chest before releasing it to dry. These are not sentences. They are offerings, because sometimes what we long to say cannot be spoken. It must be shaped, aligned, lifted. That's what the obelisk is. A message carved upward, not for power, not for politics, but for return, to remind the sky that we, too, were once made of stars. You open your eyes. The sun has shifted. The shadow now touches you. You don't move. You let it pass over you like a sentence completing itself. You think of how much modern life speaks outward, loud, fast, desperate for echo. But here, nothing echoes. It just rises. The Egyptians understood that truth didn't need to be repeated. It just needed to be aligned, placed, faced north, faced Godward, and left to stand. They didn't write manifestos. They built geometry. They didn't record beliefs. They inscribed directions, because to them, a well-carved obelisk was not just a monument. It was an antenna, calling, listening, remembering. You brush your hand once more along the glyphs. You don't know what they say, but you feel their shape in your breath. And maybe that's enough, because language, here, was not just to communicate. It was to align, to place meaning in the same direction as the rising sun. You stand. And as you walk away, you carry something with you. Not knowledge, not translation, something quieter, orientation. Your soul, too, is a kind of obelisk, carved by years, shaped by grief and joy, etched with meanings you've never fully understood, but still you stand, and still you point upward. And maybe that's all the gods ever asked. It doesn't look like much from the outside. A low building, half shadowed by the edge of a crumbling colonnade. Sand settled like sleep in its corners. But something draws you in. Not the architecture, but the invitation. As if the stone itself is whispering, you've been here before. You cross the threshold. Not walking, but returning. The air inside is different. cool, still, infused with something that feels like memory. Not the memory of facts, but of dreams. This is the Ankh, the house of life, a library, a temple, a threshold between knowledge and being. But here, books do not sit in rows. Scrolls are not read with the eyes. Here, you learn with your breath, with your posture, with the way your skin reacts to the glyphs carved into silence. Because the ancients knew something we've forgotten, that some truths cannot be learned, they must be remembered. And to remember, you must first forget what you think you know. You walk through long vaulted chambers. Papyrus scrolls rest in niches, but they feel more like sleeping beings than objects, each one wrapped in linen, tied with thin reeds, labeled not with titles, but with glyphs that glow faintly when your eyes soften. You reach for one, not chosen, drawn, and when you untie the cord, you don't read. You fall, a soft spiral inward as if the scroll were not made of plant and ink, but of your own forgotten thoughts. A temple from a past life, a hand on your shoulder, a star map sketched in charcoal by moonlight. You see yourself but not yourself. A scribe, a healer, a watcher of dreams. And then you're back, scroll still in your hand, breath caught, heart slow. This is not study, it's return. You now understand these libraries weren't about knowledge. They were rituals, sleeping architecture designed to reawaken the parts of the soul that modern light has blinded. The walls here are painted not with stories, but with instructions for remembering. Images of serpents swallowing their tails, eyes that never close, stars dripping like ink from the mouths of priests, and at the center of it all, a single empty room. You enter. The floor is stone, but smooth like skin. The ceiling curves not sharply, but like a dome meant to mimic the inside of a skull. This is not accidental. This was the sleep chamber, where initiates came to dream themselves open. You lie down, not in exhaustion, but in reverence. And the moment your back touches the floor, something inside you unfolds. You are no longer thinking. You are listening to images, to smells, to that sound you hear just before falling asleep when the world lets go of language and becomes color again. This is dream incubation, an ancient practice, a ritual more sacred than reading. Here, they would sleep not to rest, but to access truths too vast for waking logic. You see flashes, a river of ink, splitting and rejoining like thought itself. A woman standing between two jackals, holding a mirror made of stars. A name carved in water. You do not understand these things, but your body does. It breathes more slowly. It forgets its borders. And when you rise, because eventually you do, you are not smarter. You are softer. You walk differently. Less like a seeker, more like a dream still wearing the shape of a person. You pass the scrolls again, but this time you do not reach for them. You bow, not out of obligation, but out of recognition, because you now understand you are also a scroll. You are also a house of life. You are also a Ankh. And when you sleep tonight, perhaps something inside you will untie itself and open, not to learn, but to remember. You sit by the edge of the river, not the Nile exactly, but something older, something quieter, a current not of water, but of self. Reflections flicker across its surface, not of your face, but of yourselves, plural, layered, incomplete without one another. This is the truth the Egyptians held like a sacred map. That the soul is not singular. It is a constellation, a being made of pieces, woven like linen around a sacred name. You were never just a body. You were never just a mind. You were a ka, a ba, a shadow, a name, a heart, a breath, a whisper. The ka was your vital force, the echo of the divine that entered you at birth and stood beside you like a double made of flame. It lived in your food, your sleep, your rituals. It needed sustenance. Not just bread, but prayer. And when you died, your ka remained, hovering, lingering in the tomb, waiting to be remembered, waiting to be fed. You feel it now, this part of you that doesn't move, but sustains. A warmth beneath your breath, a flame that doesn't flicker unless ignored. Then there is the Ba, the soul that travels, that dreams, that leaves your body at night and returns just before dawn. It's often drawn as a bird with a human head because it flies between worlds. It is your personality, your emotional body, your memory of who you are when no one is looking. And when you die, the Ba must recognize the Ka in the afterlife. Only then can they reunite. Only then can you become whole again. You close your eyes now and feel something lift. But perhaps that part of you that remembers other skies, other names, other beds you've awakened in. You don't see visions, you feel impressions. A window with blue shutters, a bell tolling somewhere beyond fog, a child's laughter that sounds like your own but isn't. This is not reincarnation. It is recollection, bringing the pieces back into conversation. The Egyptians believed that the soul must be assembled after death like a sacred ritual, not judged, but recalled, like putting on a robe you once wore in a dream you thought you'd forgotten. You rise, the river shifts, and on its surface, you glimpse another shape. Your shadow. It is not darkness, it is record. Everything you've ever done follows you in this shape, silent, attached. The shadow does not accuse, it witnesses. And you begin to understand the ancients did not fear judgment the way we do. They feared disintegration. The idea that the pieces of their soul might lose each other, might forget their dance. So they preserved names, carved hearts into stone, fed shadows with offerings, whispered prayers so the Ba would find its way home. You look up, and for a moment, you see yourself not as one, but as many. A constellation of presence, Ka at your side, Ba above your crown, Shiat following your heel, Ib your heart pulsing truth, Ren your name hidden in breath. And something shifts. Gently, you feel less lost, not because you understand, but because you no longer think you were ever meant to be just one thing. You were meant to echo, to reflect, to dissolve and reappear. You were never alone in here. There were always others inside you, and they were all just trying to find each other in the dark. You hear it before you see it. A sound so small, it could be mistaken for nothing. A hush, a sift, a falling rhythm of grains over gold. Not a storm, not a crash, just sand, meeting metal, dust, meeting death. You are standing at the edge of a burial, but no one is crying. No one is speaking. They are listening to that sound, that sacred sound, of sand poured slowly over a painted face. The mask gleams beneath it. Still, blue and gold, eyes wide not in fear, but in eternal attention. This is not a grave. This is a sentence still being spoken, and that sand each grain a word. The Egyptians understood that silence was not a lack. It was a language. They spoke it with incense, with posture, with timing, with shadow. And when they buried their dead, they did not do it loudly. They did not fill the space with sorrow. They created a silence so complete, it became presence, a chamber for the soul to remember itself. You kneel beside the tomb. The desert wind pulls at your robe like a forgotten prayer. And in that moment, you realize this ritual is not about grief. It is about transition. The pouring of sand is not to cover the face. It is to seal the moment, to press the memory of the person into the world so gently that nothing breaks, only blends. You reach out. Let a handful of sand run through your fingers. It moves like time. It sings like memory. It settles like forgiveness. And beneath it the mask does not flinch. Its eyes do not close. They never needed to, because this face was never meant to hide. It was meant to hold dignity, hold shape, hold identity as the soul traveled through the Duat, the underworld. This is why they crafted the mask so carefully, with gold, because the skin of the gods was gold, with lapis lazuli to mirror the night sky, with black coal around the eyes, so the soul could see clearly even in darkness. Not decoration, direction. This mask was not for the living. It was for you, the soul, to find its way back to what mattered. You place your hand on the edge of the tomb. The stone is cool, but not lifeless. It vibrates in that low, slow rhythm you've started to recognize as sacred. You close your eyes, and in the darkness, you hear it again. Sand, soft, steady, carrying meaning. You see flickers of the ceremony, the priest holding the jar, the mother standing still, mouth covered with linen, not to mute, but to protect the words she dared not speak. The child watching with eyes that would remember the silence long after memory of the person faded. This wasn't about letting go. It was about continuing. In Egyptian belief, death did not erase identity. It revealed it. It clarified it. And the burial mask was not a goodbye. It was a mirror for the soul, to see its own face not as it had been in flesh, but as it truly was in essence. And so the final act wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was sand, soft, precise, falling in a stream like time's gentlest goodbye. You feel tears, but not from sorrow, from recognition. You realize how much of your life has been spent fearing silence, filling it, avoiding it, mistaking it for emptiness. But here beneath the sky, beside the dead, beside your own breath, you realize silence is the only language that never lies. It reveals, it remembers, it heals. You stand, dust your palms, look once more at the golden face now nearly covered, and you feel not loss but stillness. Not absence, but arrival. And when the last handful of sand falls, you bow your head, not because the ritual is over, but because you have entered it, and the silence inside you finally has a shape. You look up at the sky, and it is no longer blue. The last threads of daylight curl like smoke behind the horizon. And with that final breath of gold he begins. Ra, the sun god, the eternal fire. But here, in this moment, he is not shining. He is descending, because the Egyptians knew that the sun did not set. It died. And not metaphorically, but ritually. Night after night. A cosmic sacrifice repeated for all of time. You close your eyes, and now you follow. You enter the Duat, the Egyptian underworld. But this is no hell, no punishment. It is a realm of transformation, of riddles, of monsters that are not evil, just old. Too old for names, too old for light. Ra sails upon his solar bark, a golden boat carved from time and intent. He is not alone. With him, Sia, the god of perception, Heka, the spirit of magic, and Mayhen, a protective serpent curled around the boat like a vow. But even with all this danger waits, because the Duat is not silent. It shifts, it tests, it asks questions without language. You begin to see it, the river of knives, cutting through illusion, the field of fireflies, where the souls of the almost awakened flicker, the mirror lake, which shows not your face, but the face of who you feared becoming. And Ra, he moves forward, not quickly, not proudly, but steadily, because every hour of the Duat is a gate. Every gate, a guardian. Every guardian, a part of himself he must confront. In the 5th hour, he meets his corpse. A golden body from yesterday's sun, still glowing, still warm, but lifeless. and he must look at it, bow to it, and say, I am not what I was, but I remember, and I still go forward. You take a breath. It feels like swallowing light. Then comes the 6th hour, the darkest, the heart of the underworld, where the boat pauses, where even the gods go quiet. This is the hour of Apep, the serpent of chaos. Longer than time, hungrier than memory. Apep doesn't roar. It unravels. Wherever it slithers, meaning dissolves, direction disappears. Light forgets itself, and yet Ra confronts it. Every single night. Not because he always wins, but because he refuses not to try. The battle isn't about victory. It's about choice. About showing up even when the end seems certain. The gods chant spells. Mayhem tightens his coils. The boat shakes. And then somehow Ra shines again. Just faintly. Just enough. And the bark continues, hour by hour. The Duat releases him. Not because it loves him, but because he earned the right to rise. And at the 12th hour he is reborn. The sun, once dead, now reborn from the mouth of the goddess Nut. Rising again, not as a king, but as a choice to begin again. You open your eyes, and dawn has come. You hadn't noticed. You'd been too deep in the current of this cosmic rhythm, and now light returns. But it means more, because you understand now daylight is not guaranteed. It is a gift, given by something that chose to pass through darkness, through doubt, through disintegration and still rise. You look at the sun, not with worship, with respect, because now you know, to shine is not to never fall. It is to fall every night and still return. He waits at the edge, always at the edge, never in the spotlight, never in the throne room. But without him, no one makes it through. You see him now, black as midnight, head of a jackal, eyes like still water that has seen too many names dissolve into silence. Anubis. But do not flinch. He is not here to frighten you. He is not the god of death. He is the god of passage, of grief, of hands that still tremble as they prepare the dead for the next breath. He kneels beside the body. Not yours, not yet, but someone you loved. Once, and in his presence, you do not cry. Not because you don't want to, but because you don't need to. Grief is already being held, not denied, not rushed, not solved, held, gently, completely. Anubis does not speak, but he moves with reverence, touching the forehead, the heart, the feet, drawing invisible glyphs with fingers made of smoke. You remember now, in ancient Egypt, the dead were not discarded. They were escorted. Anubis was their companion, their silent guide through the weight of what must be left behind. He did not judge. He did not delay. He made room for farewell. You close your eyes, and a memory rises. A time you tried to say goodbye, but words cracked in your throat. A time you held someone's hand and didn't know it would be the last. A name you still whisper when no one is around. Grief is not an enemy. It is a doorway, and Anubis is its keeper. You follow him now, through a corridor not made of walls but of moments. Each step takes you through something you never truly let go. An old photo, an unanswered message, the last scent on a piece of clothing you still keep in a drawer. You do not push these things away. Anubis does not ask that. He asks only that you walk through them, slowly, with breath. Because letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means releasing the weight so the memory can float. You reach a chamber. In its center, a table made of stone and shadow. Upon it, a linen-wrapped body, and beside it, jars. Not random, not decorative. These are the canopic jars, keepers of the organs. Each one protected by a different deity. Each one a vow that nothing meaningful would be thrown away. Even the body, they believed, was worthy of ritual. Even in death, it deserved precision, honor, care. And in that you understand, grief, too, deserves precision, honor, care, not rushed, not silenced, not overcome, but walked with, sat beside, wrapped, gently, in linen made of time. Anubis places his hand on your shoulder. You do not feel chills. You feel gravity. He is not here to remove your grief. He is here to walk with it until it becomes a garden, not a wound. You step back. The body fades. The corridor dissolves. But something remains. A softness. A space. A willingness to stop gripping what already wants to rest. You open your eyes, and the world is quiet, but not empty. It is full of everything you've ever lost, still echoing, still sacred, but no longer heavy. You whisper a name. It does not break you. It carries you. And for the first time, you understand. Grief is not the cost of love. It is its final form, its last gesture, its softest echo. And Anubis, he does not take the dead. He takes your hand and says, "We can go now." You're not leaving them behind. You're carrying them forward. In lighter ways, the walls around you shimmer. Not with light, but with presence. Eyes, everywhere. Carved into sandstone. Painted in lapis. Inlaid in obsidian. But they are not watching you. They are watching through you. These are the Udjat, the eyes of Horus, also called the whole eye. They are not for decoration. They are keys, portals, windows that do not open outward but inward. You walk slowly, not because you fear what you'll find, but because you sense that these eyes do not accept half-truths. To stand in their gaze is to be unwrapped, to be seen fully even by parts of yourself you've hidden for lifetimes. You stop before one, carved in a perfect ellipse, spiraling beneath like a question etched in time. This is the left eye, the lunar eye, the one that sees emotion, memory, dream. It was torn from Horus in battle and pieced together again by the god Thoth. So it became a symbol not of perfection, but of restored vision, a reminder that sight is not clarity. It is integration. To truly see, you must see through the wound. You must let the brokenness teach you shape. You close your eyes. And now the Udjat opens in you. Suddenly you see not what's in front of you, but what's behind your thoughts. The moment you decided to stay silent when something in you screamed. The time you smiled but felt hollow. The dreams you buried because they didn't fit the map you were handed. These aren't regrets. They are layers. And the eye sees them all. Not to shame you, but to free you. Because you are not just what you see. You are what you turn away from. You are the shadow behind your certainty. The silence beneath your speech. The Udjat doesn't blink. It doesn't judge. It just illuminates. You step deeper. Now you stand before the right eye, the solar eye. Sharp, piercing, woven from logic, reason, strategy. This is not the eye of dream. It is the eye of pattern. It reveals the illusions you've mistaken for truths. That busyness equals purpose. That certainty means safety. That if you cannot see the answer, there must be none. This eye burns through that. Not cruelly, cleanly, and you let it. You feel it cut through your need to explain, your hunger for clarity, your fear of being wrong. And in the center of the cut you find softness, because truth, when all illusions fall away, is not hard. It's quiet. It's forgiving. It just is. You breathe, and both eyes are now open. Moon and sun, dream and reason, soft and sharp. You are being seen not by another but by yourself. And for the first time, you do not turn away. You feel memory rise like incense. The night you first questioned your own story. The stranger whose silence felt like understanding. A window you stared out of, not knowing why, but feeling that something ancient was staring back. These are moments when the eye cracked through your day. Tiny ruptures in the illusion. Sacred leaks in the dam of identity. And you begin to smile. Because now you see that seeing clearly was never about having answers. It was about letting go of false ones. The eye doesn't give you sight. It gives you space to witness, to soften, to stay. You turn away from the wall. But the eye stays with you. Not as an image, but as a rhythm. Behind your ribs. Inside your breath. A quiet vow to keep seeing even when it hurts. Even when it's unclear. Even when it means undoing everything you thought you were. And with that, you walk forward. Not away from illusion, but through it. Because truth is not somewhere else. It's right here. Behind the veil you just stopped holding up. You walk into a room where no one has spoken in centuries. And yet you feel greeted, not by ghosts, but by remembrance. Bowls, jars, small carved figurines resting carefully on stone shelves, as if they're still waiting for someone to return. These are offerings, not of wealth, but of meaning, left not by the dead, but by the living who refuse to let memory die. A bowl of dates, still darkened, dried by time, but wrapped in linen as if to say, you are still welcome here. A reed boat. Miniature. Placed near a figure of a woman carved with laughter in her eyes. A small vial of scented oil, uncorked so that scent, the most invisible sense, could rise like a voice through eternity. You kneel, not because the room demands it, but because something in you does. You understand now, in ancient Egypt, to be remembered was to remain alive, not in body, not even in soul, but in story, in gesture. They believed the soul had many parts, but one of them, perhaps the most fragile, was the wren your name. And if your name was never spoken again, if no one poured water in your memory, if no one left a cup of beer, or a fig, or a whisper, then you faded, not as punishment, but as silence. You look at the offerings again. You see more than objects now. You see relationships. The son who carved a tiny lion because it reminded him of how brave you were. The friend who baked the sweet cake you always asked for in spring. The granddaughter who visited every new moon to sit beside your tomb and hum songs she wasn't sure were yours, but that felt close. These are not gifts. They are bridges between now and then, between who you were and who you still are in someone's breath. You touch the rim of a vessel. Its clay is cracked, but still warm, as if memory itself has a temperature. You close your eyes, and in that darkness you feel it, your own name being spoken by someone who still carries you. You do not hear it in sound. You hear it in gesture, in the way someone touches an old photograph, in the pause between words when your absence is felt, in the candle lit, not for ritual, but for remembering. You begin to understand eternity was not measured in years. It was measured in being remembered by one more heart. The Egyptians left food not because the dead would eat it, but because the living needed to offer, to express, to continue the conversation, to say, I still know you, I still feel you, I still love you, and that was enough to keep the soul near. You rise slowly, and now, you wonder who will leave offerings for you, not just objects, but moments, stories, songs, soft rituals. Who will whisper your name in the dark because it still tastes like honey on their tongue? You do not fear being forgotten, not now, because you understand your task is to remember others, to become the one who leaves the bowl, the date, the smile, to carry others so they may carry you. The circle never ends. It only moves hands. You step out of the chamber. The air is the same, but you are not. You've remembered what it means to remember. And that is enough to keep the light on in the afterworld. The light here is soft, like breath caught between two heartbeats. You do not walk. You arrive, as if the path itself grew beneath your feet only once you stopped trying. This is not a throne room. There are no crowns, no trumpets, No judgment, only stillness. Endless fields of papyrus reeds sway gently in wind that does not blow but listens. This is Aru, the field of reeds, the afterlife in Egyptian thought. But not in the way you've imagined. There is no reward here, no applause, no congratulations, because heaven, to the Egyptians, was not something earned. It was something released into, a resting place for the soul once it had remembered its many names. Once it had walked its many corridors. Once it had stood in silence beside its own shadow. Now, it simply rests, not in forgetfulness, but in fullness. You pass a tree whose leaves shimmer like bronze prayers. At its base, a shallow pool reflects the sky exactly as it appeared on the night you first wondered if you mattered. And it reflects you now not as a person, but as a pattern, not a face, but a rhythm. You bend down, touch the water. It ripples but not outward, inward, and in that motion, you feel it. You have arrived not in a place, but in a truth, that all this time, you were not seeking joy, or success, or meaning. You were seeking stillness, the kind that does not resist, the kind that holds, the kind that asks nothing from you but your presence. You look around. There are others here, but no one rushes. No one competes. They harvest wheat with golden sickles not to survive, but to remember what the body once knew. To touch earth without fear. To breathe without thought. And you are allowed to simply be. That is the heaven they envisioned. Not reward, but permission to no longer strive. To no longer prove, to let your soul be its own reason for existing. You walk past a row of lotus flowers. They open slowly, without audience. One turns toward you, not with urgency, but with recognition, as if it knows you've carried too much for too long. You sit, and for the first time in lifetimes, you do not reach for anything. You are not climbing, not transforming, not shedding or seeking. You are simply here, and that is enough for the reeds to sway, for the birds to sing without direction, for the air to hold your name like a lullaby. You close your eyes, but not in sleep, in surrender, and in that soft darkness. You feel what the living rarely feel. Not euphoria, not bliss, but equilibrium, the balancing of all you were and all you are, the reconciling of the path and the traveler. You are no longer a question. You are a rhythm, a part of this field, a breath in the wind that no longer needs to move to be free. And when you rise, if you do, it will not be because you must. It will be because the stillness has become a part of you, and you carry it like a seed inside the breath you've just now taken. The sand shifts beneath your feet, not in motion, but in memory. Each grain, a moment someone once lived. Each shimmer, a name once whispered under moonlight. You kneel. Let your fingers trace the warm dust. It doesn't resist. It welcomes you, because the Egyptians knew everything becomes dust. Even gods, even truth, even you. But not all dust is equal. Some dust holds gold, not the metal, the meaning. The kind of gold that glows through absence. The gold that remains after grief has softened into reverence. You reach for something you didn't know was there. A scarab, small, worn. Its back etched with symbols you cannot read but somehow understand. A name, not yours, but someone's. And suddenly you feel it. The truth they carried, that to be named was to be remembered. And to be remembered was to live again. You turn the scarab in your hand. Not for power, for presence. Because here, names are not tags. They are portals. They are the bridge between time and meaning. The Egyptians believed that as long as your name was spoken, as long as your story was carried, you still existed in the heart of the world. So they carved names in stone, painted them on tomb walls, wrote them on amulets, hidden in the folds of linen wrapped around the dead. Names were light that even death could not extinguish. And now you wonder about your own, not what it sounds like, but what it means when no one is left to say it. You picture your name falling from someone's lips years from now, not shouted, not mourned, just whispered in wonder, in longing. That's how names live forever. Not in monuments. In memory. You rise, hold the scarab close, and around you, the wind begins to speak, not in language, in rhythm, in a soft circling like time wrapping around itself. You see them now, the ones who came before, not as ghosts, as echoes, faces made of story, bodies made of breath. They smile, not because you arrived, but because you remembered. And as they pass, they leave behind dust, but not the kind you wipe away, the kind that lingers, that shines in sunlight like secrets. This dust is gold, because it carries names, because it carries you. You close your eyes, and names rise like smoke. The name of a mother who hummed a song you still sing without realizing. The name of a friend whose laughter still echoes in your dreams as if it belonged to your own mouth. The name of a place that no longer exists on maps, but still unfolds whenever you close your eyes near water. These names are your roots, but also your branches. They do not tie you down. They lift you, and in return you give your own name to the wind, not to shout, not to claim, but to share, as an offering, as a soft truth. Because you understand now, what matters is not how loudly you live. It is how deeply you are carried when you're gone. You walk again, back through the corridor of things once known, back through still temples, through walls that remember light, and everywhere you see inscriptions, not of gods, not of empires, but of people, carved gently, repeated often, traced by fingers who believed that to forget someone was to lose part of the sky. And you believe it now too, because even the stars, those long dead lights, still speak to us through memory. You breathe. It is soft, but it carries centuries. And in that breath, you say a name, any name, from your past, from your story, from your blood, and somewhere, a soul turns gently in the field of reeds, smiling because they were just called back into being. The journey is almost over now, but not like endings you've known before. This one doesn't close. It dissolves. You are no longer walking through temples. You are the quiet between the columns. You are no longer reading hieroglyphs. You are the silence they were carved into. And still, the echoes linger. Softly, like golden dust settling on warm stone. You remember the stillness of the Nile at night, where the world forgot to speak so that memory could rise. The way time curled like a scarab, looping through itself, refusing to be linear. How pyramids weren't monuments of ego, but of longing prayers in stone, for someone to find them and still feel the breath inside the rock. You remember the feather, and the heart placed beside it, not to be judged, but to be heard, to be weighed only in truth, only in softness. You remember Sekhmet, the lioness, and the mercy in fire, how even destruction could carry compassion when wielded with balance. You remember the stars, and how the obelisks didn't just point upward, they spoke, in geometry, in silence, in light. The libraries, those houses of dreams, where you didn't learn, but remembered. And then came your soul Ka, Ba, Shut, Ren, Ib, pieces of you gathered like constellations finally speaking to one another in the dark. And you walked alongside Anubis, not as a mourner, but as someone learning to let go without losing. You placed offerings not to beg, but to remember. Because memory is what kept the soul near. And then you watch the sun die and choose to return. Not because it must, because it can. You touch the Udjat, the eye that sees behind illusion, and you saw yourself not clearly, but fully. And when you reached the field of reeds, no one clapped, no one cheered, But the wind paused because you had finally arrived without needing to prove you deserved to. You stood still, and heaven welcomed you by resting with you. And now you are here, back where you started. But softer, wider, quieter. Let all those images return now, but not as thoughts, as breath. Feel the Nile moving slowly beneath your ribs. Feel the gold dust settling in your shoulders. Feel the scarab closing its wings over your worries. Let go of the map. You no longer need it. You've walked the terrain of something far older than time. Let go of the names just for now. They will return when called. Let go of questions. They've been answered in ways you'll never understand but always recognize. And if a tear comes, let it fall. Because even tears were part of the ritual. Even tears were once poured as offerings. Now let your spine melt into the bed. Feel the weight of your body held by earth. As it always was, let your jaw loosen. Let your eyes soften. Let your breath return to a rhythm older than language. Inhale, like someone who remembers they are loved just by existing. Exhale, like someone who no longer needs to carry the day. You are safe now. You are not forgotten. You are not late. You are not broken. You are remembered by all the things you never realized were listening. The wind brushing through trees that once grew near your childhood home. The scent of something baking that reminded someone of your laughter. The way someone touches a book you once touched and feels a warmth without knowing why. You are not gone. You are not even distant. You are simply resting. And so we close not with a goodbye, but with a return. Return to your breath. Return to your body. Return to that soft space inside your chest where the world no longer needs explanation. Only stillness. Let these final images dissolve now. Like gold leaf gently fading into air. A reed boat floating under a lavender sky. An unopened scroll that hums when you sleep. A hand held not in memory, but in eternity. Everything is with you. Nothing is chasing. Nothing is missing. You have made it. Not to an end, but to a pause. The kind of pause that holds everything worth keeping. And now, as your eyes grow heavier and your thoughts slow, remember this. You are not the dust. You are not the gold. You are the name that lives between them. You are what is remembered when breath is gone. And in this silence, you shine. The sand shifts beneath your feet, not in motion, but in memory. Each grain, a moment someone once lived. Each shimmer, a name once whispered under moonlight. You kneel. Let your fingers trace the warm dust. It doesn't resist. It welcomes you, because the Egyptians knew everything becomes dust, even gods, even truth, even you. But not all dust is equal. Some dust holds gold, not the metal, the meaning, the kind of gold that glows through absence. The gold that remains after grief has softened into reverence. You reach for something you didn't know was there. A scarab, small, worn. Its back etched with symbols you cannot read but somehow understand. A name, not yours, but someone's. And suddenly you feel it. The truth they carried that to be named was to be remembered. And to be remembered was to live again. You turn the scarab in your hand, not for power, for presence. Because here, names are not tags. They are portals. They are the bridge between time and meaning. The Egyptians believed that as long as your name was spoken, as long as your story was carried, you still existed in the heart of the world. So they carved names in stone, painted them on tomb walls, wrote them on amulets, hidden in the folds of linen wrapped around the dead. Names were light that even death could not extinguish. And now you wonder about your own. Not what it sounds like, but what it means when no one is left to say it. You picture your name falling from someone's lips years from now, not shouted, not mourned, just whispered in wonder, in longing. That's how names live forever, not in monuments, in memory. You rise, hold the scarab close, and around you, the wind begins to speak, not in language, in rhythm, in a soft circling like time wrapping around itself. You see them now, the ones who came before, not as ghosts, as echoes, faces made of story, bodies made of breath. They smile, not because you arrived, but because you remembered. And as they pass, they leave behind dust, but not the kind you wipe away, the kind that lingers, that shines in sunlight like secrets. This dust is gold, because it carries names, because it carries you. You close your eyes, and names rise like smoke. The name of a mother who hummed a song you still sing without realizing. The name of a friend whose laughter still echoes in your dreams as if it belonged to your own mouth. The name of a place that no longer exists on maps, but still unfolds whenever you close your eyes near water. These names are your roots, but also your branches. They do not tie you down. They lift you, and in return you give your own name to the wind, not to shout, not to claim, but to share, as an offering, as a soft truth. Because you understand now, what matters is not how loudly you live, it is how deeply you are carried when you're gone. You walk again, back through the corridor of things once known, back through still temples, through walls that remember light, and everywhere you see inscriptions, not of gods, not of empires, but of people, carved gently, repeated often, traced by fingers who believed that to forget someone was to lose part of the sky. And you believe it now too, because even the stars, those long dead lights, still speak to us through memory. You breathe. It is soft, but it carries centuries. And in that breath, you say a name, any name, from your past, from your story, from your blood. And somewhere, a soul turns gently in the field of reeds, smiling because they were just called back into being.